I first started sword fishing in 1975. Called up and given the opportunity to cook on a boat. And I got on my first boat in Panama City, Florida. There was 5 men on a boat, including the captain, and I was taken on as a cook. And what I didn't know was I would be doing all the duties that everybody does on deck, and then when the work was done, I would cook for everybody. When we used to set our fishing line out at night, you have to picture a spool of thread that was on the back of the boat that was 6 or 8 feet wide and probably 5 feet around, and it was a huge giant drum that looked like a spool of thread that was hydraulically driven. We would start the line at night coming out off the back of the boat, and we'd tie our first buoy on, which is called a high flyer, which is a aluminum pole with weights on the bottom and a reflector top. You'd tie a big balloon ball in the middle so it would float straight up in the air, and that's what the radar would pick up. The captain sitting in the wheelhouse would be able to see it on his radar as a little dot. And we would throw that overboard and start the line going out, and we would snap our hook lines every 60 feet. We would try to snap. There was a knot, and in between each knot of 60 feet we would try to snap a hook line on that was 16 feet long, called a gangent. And each tub that was put next to me would have 100 hooks in it, and I was one of the baiters, and we used frozen mackerel, and we would put a big shark hook through the top of the head of the mackerel, throw it overboard, snap the line on, and it would take us anywhere from 2.5 to 4 hours. Most of the boats that I fished on was capable of fishing 25 miles of line and putting 1,500 hooks out in the water. If you were to fly over in an airplane, you would see these orange balloon balls going in a straight line. Every football field long, you'd see an orange float ball. So you'd just see a long orange float line stretching across the horizon. At first light, we would hook it back on the boat and run it through the different fair leads and tie it onto the drum and slowly start hauling it in. The boat would slowly go up the gear as it came on the boat through these huge brass rollers called the fair lead. And at one point I unsnapped all the gear, that's called the hauler. Other times in my fishing I coiled the hooks, who was called the coiler. The person behind the coiler was the ball man, I also did that. And then there was the last man on deck would handle the high flyers and clean any fish that came aboard. One of the things that we would occasionally catch were sharks, and it was the easiest way to just try to cut the line next to the hook and let the shark swim away with the hook in its mouth that we were always told would disintegrate in a short period of time. A period of time we did catch a lot of different sharks. There was a point in my fishing where we found it interesting to try to catch some of the big sharks, take the heads and remove the jaws and tie them up in the rigging. And we would also cut jaws into quarters and boil them, which used to make a great smell in the wheelhouse. And that's what we used to give away to all the pretty girls in port, was shark's teeth. The first trip turned out to be actually some of the roughest seas that I ever saw. I was told that the wind was coming up and we were going to see a storm. And we had all of our gear in the water, probably had 12 or 15 miles of gear out that we had to collect. And you start hauling your line back at first light. We'd caught a few fish. I was working the rail and hauling in the flotation balls. And as it started to get light out, the wind started to pick up more and more. And when you fish with other boats, you usually set your lines 1/4 mile apart from each other. And I started to notice that the other boat would disappear. And then we'd go up on top of a wave and the boat would reappear. But as the wind got picked up more and more and the seas got rougher and rougher, the hook lines are spaced every 60 feet apart. And I remember going up on a wave and seeing 3 hook lines pop out of the water, and they're all 16 feet long. we took a wave off the back of the deck, and I was putting a ball away, and I remember rolling on the deck over in the corner, and the swordfish that had been cleaned all rolled across like gray logs, and we all ended up in the corner in the wash. But everybody started to get a little nervous, and I was told to just hold a knife and cut the gear when I was supposed to. I don't remember as we got all of our gear back that day, but it was time for me to cook, and I remember putting some sort of a roast in the oven, and I had to shove bricks on each side of the pan so it would be not rolling around inside the oven, and there was actually lock hasps on the sides of the oven so it wouldn't open up. When the swordfish would come on deck in the morning, I was amazed at how big the eye sockets were, and it's almost as if the eye sockets were as big as a baseball. And it made sense because swordfish travel very, very fast. They've been clocked up to 60 miles an hour, and they swim in depths from 1,200 feet to swimming on the surface. But these huge eyes would obviously be able to see their bait very easily. And we used to come up with silly things to entertain ourselves, and we actually removed some of the eyes, let them dry, and the cartilage we always thought would make a very interesting napkin ring. And I don't think I brought any of those home to my mother. One day when we were fishing off of the Carolinas, we had set our gear out, we were getting ready to haul it back. It was early in the morning, and I was on the back deck cleaning the fish, and the fellow that was hauling the gear and unsnapping all the hook lines, a line came up and somehow swung around, wrapped around, and cut and caught his wrist, and pricked the skin, was able to rip across, and I'd never seen anything like it. The skin just opened right up wide, about 2 inches wide, and just looked like a big raw wound. We didn't have any sort of tetanus shots or heavy first aid, and I remember that my captain did call the Coast Guard, and an hour later, sure enough, a huge helicopter said, "We're going to send a basket down, and your man needs to jump in." Bars that I was told to make sure that I did not frequent in Key West. The shrimpers were very jealous of the type of fishing that we did, and they were a very tough lot, and I was told there were certain bars that you didn't go into because you may not come out. I did get my fair share of trouble in Florida, and I was able to escape, and here I am today telling you my stories. And I remember driving in my old Malibu convertible down to Buddy's Tattoo Shop in Newburyport after a lot of apricot brandy, and walking into Buddy's and saying I wanted to get a swordfish put on my shoulder. My captain actually had one put on the top of his stomach, so when he raised his arm it would get to be twice as big and stretch out, which was quite funny. But this has lasted me a long time. It's been on my arm for better than half my life. And we thought that was pretty funny. We may not want to roll that. That's a little